All right. Hello, everybody. We're live.
We're live. You still haven't moved over.
Self-adjustment.
Seriously, I was like, can I not be sitting over here on the side? But let's get started.
Welcome back to another episode of Launchpad TV.
That's right. We're getting our attendees are populating and joining us today. We've got a great show. We're going to be hearing from Knud from our Launchpad New Orleans, and he's going to be talking to us all about tea.
All right.
And I'm pumped because we've got Lyons coming back due to popular demand. We've got Catherine. She's going to come back, talk to us about all things. Whoever knew that they'd know all the acronyms of EIDLs and PPPs and all, yeah, you know me, will be joining us, and she's going to be answering more questions and all that. So let's jump into it.
All right.
Do you want to introduce us?
I'm Chris.
And I'm Ann, and this is
Launchpad TV.
That's right. And we are airing our segment, Life,
Style,
Business. It's not a dirty word. Today is my mom's birthday. So shout out to Winnie Driscoll. She's 84 years young. She is in Toronto.
There she is.
Oh, wait, I gotta wait for her cameo here. She has not been out of the house in a month except to go to the doctor. My dad is also stuck inside. Stay there, guys. Stay there. And we did a little virtual happy hour, happy birthday. My sisters went over and stood outside of their wall and brought them their new masks that were my mom's fancy birthday present. So my sister had a friend who was making masks in Toronto. And we brought those over to her, and then we dialed in to say hi. And so she's doing great, but they are stuck behind their walls. She is also through her 4th of 6 chemo treatments, and she is doing great. And we're saying, go Winnie. And we can't wait to be back dancing with you again. That's right, that is my mom.
Who's this handsome
She's
guy?
rocking. That's my husband. Because you know what else we celebrated this weekend was our anniversary. Yeah.
Anniversary.
We did some virtual dancing, and it was great. We also had some Zoom happy hours.
Mm-hmm.
Is everyone else having a lot of Zoom happy hours?
How did those go?
We've had them with our fam jam. We've had them with friends. We've had them with old long last friends, and it is a lot of Zoom in the after hours. And I am just going to say it on the record. It's not that fun. I don't know about you guys, but
there's it's not like a cocktail party where you can have a conversation with one person. You basically, if you take the reins and want to make a joke or have a comment or whatever, you're talking to everyone.
Yeah.
And so you're either all cross-talking each other or one person is holding court.
which means the jokes seriously have to land, which is hard for you.
I heard, oh yeah, right. I heard somebody played Pictionary on Zoom.
Well, that's a good idea. Like an activity, right?
Like an activity.
Then there's a reason. That's smart. Then there's a reason for people to be talking.
We did 2 family Zoom calls with your family and my family.
Back to back.
The first 20 minutes of both of them were
right.
our moms.
There's a whole new conference called Bingo for
their
Zoom
cameras.
cocktail hour. My mom was like, I don't know, where's the little boxes? There's a box with the things. I can't see Annie. Why can't I see Annie? Why can't I see her? And then finally my niece called her and she was like, Granny, I'm FaceTiming you. So she FaceTimed her to then show her on her screen where the button was so that she could get, the cascading numbers.
Yep.
And then we got off the phone there and we were a little late to the next one. But I was like, don't worry. They're going to have to go through the same sort of I don't know how to use Zoom thing for a while. And sure enough, we got on there and the grandkids we're also doing a little support ticket network. Thank God for grandchildren, because I used to be the support ticket. And now I've got my nieces who can do that. Also,
I mean, do you even know how to use TikTok?
I know how to use TikTok. I've never used it, but I should. I mean, someone did ask me, they were like, well, you must like the format because if, you know, you can sort of talk. And I was like, no, it's terrible. I have to listen now because everybody gets a turn.
Right.
We did, however, we were pretty pumped. We did a duo, like another couple. We had a hang time with them on Zoom. We did this a couple times, and that's definitely a better format. Do you not think?
Yeah.
Chris is tired of this topic. I could talk about this all
Well,
day.
I just leave the room and let you talk.
Well, that's the thing. You're my straight man. But we definitely think the 2-on-2 is the way to go, right?
Yeah.
Because then we were like cooking and chatting and just kind of, anyway, you guys get the drift and you're on it anyway. So should we get into the content of the show?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Do you want to, why don't you tell the folks about how well you know this next member, and we'll promote Knud.
Yeah, so Knud, I'm going to promote you and bring you in. Knud is a OG Launchpad member. When you come on, I'm going to ask you exactly when you started. But founder of Free Your Tea, and is a business that's perfectly positioned for this current environment. Shipping tea right to your door. So let's bring you in and unmute you and say hello to Knud. How are you?
Hey, how are you guys? Thanks for having me.
We're doing great.
Safe and sound, and that's pretty much all there is these days, right?
That's right.
So you're hunkered down in New Orleans.
Drinking tea, of course.
Drinking tea.
I mean, you need to drink tea more than ever because you need tea to consume the hours of the day before 5 when it's
true.
Totally time for a cocktail. I find I'm actually drinking less cocktails because I don't have like I'm feeling like I need a lunch glass of wine today. So my pandemic experience is we hold off till 5, so it's less. I need tea in my life, Knud.
Well, we have some of that, and yeah, I think a lot of people are spending a lot more time at home right now, and they want to drink better things and not just wine, right? So we offer that. It's a personalized tea subscription for those who don't know. So what we do is we send samples first, and we have people share their tea preferences and then rate the tea, and based on those ratings, you get a new different tea every month. So spending more time at home should be good for that. Spending more time drinking at home should be good for that, and not wanting to leave the house should be good. And then finally, of course, Mother's Day is coming up. Just a little warning for everyone. That's one of our top 2 seasons, and I think this year especially because no one's going to be able to take mom out for lunch, right? There's going to be even more demand for something nice that doesn't require you to leave the house or your mom to leave the house. So we're gearing up for that right now.
That's great. My mom loves tea. Do you ship to Canada?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we actually have quite a few subscribers in Canada. We're in 20-something different countries, but Canada by far is the largest non-US.
All right. I mean, it's a big country.
So
hey, and as you mentioned it, we have a special promo code, Launchpad in Exile. So anyone that uses code Launchpad in Exile will get a 30% recurring discount forever and ever and ever.
Better just during COVID, or are you going to make that a lifetime discount? That's a lot.
Well, I mean, you do it now and it lasts forever, but once we get back, we're going to go back to the non-exile, just the standard Launchpad 20% probably. So
heard it here first, Launchpad.
Yeah.
Numbers.
All right.
Also, we have we've had a couple of questions about this, but as soon as we saw what was starting to happen in Wuhan, and the fact that this was at some point going to come here, we were lucky enough to be able to stock up to make sure that we have tons of teas already packed, ready to go, and brought it back to the house so that I can literally run it from here. And since then, obviously checking in on suppliers, and when it comes to tea, it's all good. There's plenty of it. So that's very happy. I mean, I consider myself lucky in the sense that at least one of my businesses, I can keep running it.
That's amazing.
In the few hours a day I have of not watching kids, right?
I know everybody's parenting, teaching, and trying to run their business, right?
Yeah. That's for sure.
So Knud, talk to us a little bit about how things are going, what has been impacted, any positives? Have you seen feels weird to say, but have you seen a COVID bump? Is it something that I also think, just in the sense, because I think what we're trying to do here is actually share what you're doing, and as folks in our community and in our broader network want to support local businesses and support people who may not have foot traffic or retail traffic. I mean, you were subscription only. How are you sort of experiencing this sort of lockdown that we're all in right now?
Good questions there. It's very frustrating, right? So on the one hand, this could be a big opportunity for us. Like I said, people are at home, we're selling online, we can do this. On the other hand, the number of hours left in the day to spend on this, not a whole lot. So after just making sure we take care of our existing subscribers and all these other completely unrelated things that just has to be done, there's not a lot of time or resources for us to do any active marketing. We've seen a little bit of growth. We've had let's see, for not doing anything, it's been pretty good. So we were getting new subscribers. We don't see a lot of people canceling or anything like that, but we do need to be able to do a little more. That's for sure.
Good. And we're going to have Catherine Lyons back in a minute here, talking about some of the SBA stuff. Have you started that journey?
Yeah, it's hard. And so when I looked at the questions others had last time as well, there's so many not unique, but certainly not streamlined situations that we find ourselves in, right? So I haven't given myself payroll in forever, so I'm screwed on that. There's a couple of other things, different companies relying on each other. It's hard. I've submitted what I can, and I try just to not end up spending so many hours on these things that there's nothing left for the actual, core activity, right? But I found I've spent a lot of time on reducing and postponing costs and expenses, which left fewer hours to spend on increasing, income. But yeah, hopefully there'll be more programs and different programs, and we'll see. But it's still hard. And since you mentioned it, people are really big on buying local now, but no one thinks of e-commerce as local. So we're not Amazon. We're not big enough that we're sort of like everyone's rushing to us, and also no one's sitting at home being like, oh, we really should support that online tea subscription guy, because that would be nice, because we're not really considered local, right? So not fantastic for that part. But one of the things that I was able to do, because I used to be a politician. Like, I used to actually do things and not just sell tea. And it was been really hard for me to sit here and feel like I can't do anything to help. So I did start something called Buy NOLA Online. So it's at buynolaonline.com. And it's really just a list where you can add any company in New Orleans that sells anything online temporarily for COVID or in general. And you can visit them and you can buy from them. And it's not pretty. It's what I could do in a few hours, and it's set up so that it sort of runs itself. But it's been frustrating, because I was hoping I could get some more, volunteers to help, because I don't have the time. But there's so many things I could do. At the very least, share on Facebook, each company that's on there, and get more people to like it and follow it, and all these obvious things you do to get traction. And I've had one volunteer so far, and at the same time, in my Facebook feed, I see a lot of really nice people complaining about how bored they are and how much Netflix they're working and or watching, and I don't know how you can do that. And we're in the middle of a really, really bad global situation, and to me, I would think everyone would want to try to do what little they can to help others, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Well, yeah. Thank you, Jonah, for putting that in the chat there. I think that's a great resource that we can all see and use and share, and obviously that's kind of what we're trying to do here is send a few T subscribers your way. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that's so interesting. The last because the last guest we had on from Moxie, they also were talking about a new initiative that they did, which was the front porch family portraits in NOLA. And I think it's really interesting is that during these times, it is that organic activation where you're like, you know what? Everybody needs a little bit of help. Why don't we centralize a resource? It's so easy to be like, here's your central resources that the government's putting together, and everybody's got another website that they're talking about COVID and this thing. And actually, just that sort of side hustle of aggregating all of those local folks who are doing online is a really powerful, valuable resource. And it's interesting because I think those side hustles are actually pretty cool and organic.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of that thing in Nigeria that when we were there, they were like, there's a website that gets something like 20 million hits, and it was the black market access to Naira. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
And he would basically say that because in Nigeria, you have to like sometimes buy currency, not through the bank machine. You like buy it by people standing
Right.
next to it at the airport. And so they would have like literally in real time this thing. And it's just like, it was the jankiest site in the entire world. People went there because it was simple and easy. I mean, that's how Craigslist was formed. So it's great that you did that. And I think I would say that's like a spark of inspiration in other markets. People could think about how they could aggregate the small business community there.
Well, I did. A friend of mine asked, he's up in Madison, Wisconsin, and so I made a little clone for him because he wanted to do something similar. So what I've seen, which I think is really awesome, New Orleans is great at local in general, but it's become hyper local now. So most of the things we do now, it's neighborhood, right? So we're in Bayou St. John, and there's a bunch of groups and things for that, and it's become even more now. It's like literally our street, right? So the block of the street that we are on, we had a crawfish boil on Friday where someone got crawfish, and we all were inside of our fences talking to each other and having crawfish. There's one of the people living here, she's a ICU nurse, so we get really bad updates on how bad things are, and she's helping, and we're organizing. So we've been donating masks. We've been able to get right now we're working on healthier meals for the nurses and other staff. So there's so much going on. Like literally the houses that I can see from where I'm sitting right now have become a team for this, and I think that's wonderful, and I assume that's what's going on a lot of other places as well, and that's a great thing. And I'm pretty negative right now because I think this whole thing is really bad, as I've said, but at the end of the day, there's a little bit of a Winston Churchill aspect to it as well, right? It's really bad. There's blood, there's sweat, there's toil, there's tears, but at the end, for hopefully the most of us, it will be our finest hour, right?
That is a great message to leave on. And I encourage everyone to check out For Your Tea. It is an amazing, high quality product. It's customized and tailored to your tastes, your vibe. I remember the last time we were there, I was addicted to the one. What was it? It was like almost tasted like hot chocolate or something, and it was just...
I had, that's actually what I'm drinking right now. It's our chocolate pu'er. So it's a pu'er, meaning a fermented aged Chinese tea from Yunnan province, mixed with little cocoa nibs. So it's kind of like drinking hot chocolate with a little tint of tea to it, and much better for you. So that one's really good. I think you also like maybe the Himalayan spice, which is very popular as
I also
well.
like that as well. But that chocolate pour, I need that in my life. I'm gonna need to.
Now you know how to get
Yeah,
it.
I'm going to.
Well, that's good. There's a question from Ella about people making masks in NOLA. If you just send me a message after, because I do, there's several, and some of them have set up an online system where you can buy masks that are shipped to you, and at the same time, all the proceeds go to supporting, nurses, etc. in New Orleans. And I'm just looking at the one across the street, just drove off for her shift right now. So there are a lot of heroes out there.
Yeah.
There really are.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a tough job. All right, Knud. Well, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And we've shared that, and we'll share more information about Free Your Tea in our blog post when we post the video. Do you want to sign him off and sign Catherine on, and I'll do the intro?
We'll let you go and bring Catherine in. Good to see you, Knud.
All right.
See you guys soon.
Here we go. Week after EIDL and PPP became things we actually know about. First of all, I don't know about you, but I haven't seen the 10K come into my bank account. I check every day. I mean, I know I didn't actually put my bank account in, but I still check it just in case someone made a mistake and sent me 10K. Hasn't happened. Anyone else out there?
Has Catherine not sent it to you?
Yeah, Catherine, why haven't you sent me the 10K?
That is my responsibility, so.
Yeah. Get to work, Catherine.
I know.
We are also, I mean, we're working hard. We've done all of our work, our paperwork, we got it all in. We did the EIDL 3 times. We only got application number 1 time. So that means the first 2, throw them out. We're far back in the line, I'm sure. Like many small businesses, the window is short, and we are waving our hands in front of our bankers at Chase, because that's where we had banking relationships, because no one's taking on new banking relationships, to say, look at us, we need relief, and everybody else is doing the same thing. Our landlords want to be paid. We still have bills, Wi-Fi, utilities, insurance, they don't go away. Even though some of our members actually need relief, and some of them just want it. But for the most part, a lot of them really, really need it, and so we want to be able to help. So we can't make any moves on that right now, but we can have Catherine Lyons back.
Hi, thank you.
And answer your questions. So welcome back, Catherine. What have you been up to? How was your weekend? Did you spend it relaxing and Netflix?
I actually did a little bit this weekend, but last week was, I would say, I dare to say, one of the busiest in my career, just because of all of the, obviously just continuing to analyze the Paycheck Protection Program. New guidance was released since we last talked this time last week. So looking into that, just figuring out how this is really going to work. Is it going to work? What can we be doing to improve upon it? So lots of updates. I have a few more answers, at least, I hope, than this time last week, where we only had about 1.5 business days since the actual passage of the CARES Act that established some of these new lending facilities. So over the last week, it's just been a whirlwind of new FAQs, new guidance from Treasury and SBA. And then, of course, the application actually launched on Friday as well. So so a lot to report on the actual implementation. Obviously, still very early days. And it's not gone 100% smoothly, I would say, probably to the surprise of no one. Maybe I'll start with a few updates on that. And then can maybe go, I know there were a few questions kind of held over from last week too, that I'm happy to try to address as well as any additional questions that may be coming through too. So does that sound like a good plan?
Great. Yeah, why don't you start with some updates and we'll get in some questions.
Cool. Okay. So essentially last Thursday night, the day before the application was supposed to be released and started to be accepted, Treasury and SBA announced kind of interim rules, interim/final. So their interim rules is what they call them, but they are essentially immediately in effect. And those rules did provide some guidance on the kind of practical application, some of those detailed questions that are really important to figure out how does one actually apply, determining eligibility, what do lenders need to provide or know while they're processing loans, things like that. However, because it came out Thursday night, a lot of banks were not prepared to open the application process on Friday. Understandable. Especially considering the volume of interest that I think banks in general are receiving here. So many banks actually still have not opened their application portal yet for Paycheck Protection loans. And I'm sure many of you on this webinar are experiencing that in real time, that you maybe are not able to actually access this information or the application from your lenders. Because they've been delegated authority to essentially process all of these loans and sort of set up that process themselves internally. That timeline is essentially on them. So there's no real mandate as to when they need to get all of this up and running, other than the kind of opening date and then the closing date, which is June 30th. So just a few kind of quick stats, and these are from generally yesterday. So Bank of America was one of the first out of the gate, and they received applications, not yet approved by SBA, so that's important to note, but received applications from 177,000 small businesses to the tune of $32.6 billion. That's just one bank. So that accounts for about the 10% of the total amount allocated by Congress. This is a $349 billion program. And so Bank of America alone has seen application requests for about $32 billion, or 10% of that. Wells Fargo, they are actually no longer even accepting PPP applications as of April 5th. They have a $10 billion max that they could lend through the program, given some of their troubles a couple of years ago. They're a bit more limited and have some restrictions on them in terms of what they can have on their balance sheet. So that explains some of the reason as to why they're in limited capacity, essentially, and they've already exceeded that capacity, essentially. So they're not accepting any more applications. Capital One and Citi, as I last checked, still not accepting applications, still have not gotten their portal up and running. I believe JP Morgan Chase has. And then what we're seeing, a lot of banks are making the decision to only lend to existing clients, essentially. And some are even taking that a step further and only lending to existing clients who have already taken on debt from that institution. That, and as we've talked about before, and I think we mentioned last week, that is not necessarily a lot of businesses. I mean, a lot of businesses haven't necessarily taken out an SBA loan before. And so to limit the pool to narrowly only cover that group of small businesses, obviously we have some concerns about who is actually getting reached here. Are the very small businesses the ones that are able to access this? Are businesses that are, healthy accessing this versus those that would truly not be able to survive without a PPP loan, which is, of course, Congress's intent is to, and the non-binding guidance that they released was to prioritize, businesses that, really needed this, that were either owned by minority or women-owned businesses or in underserved communities who don't have a previous banking relationship, but that's non-binding guidance. So, the banks are not necessarily, and there's nothing necessarily on the application either to help banks determine who those folks are. So there are obviously some issues that are kind of coming to the surface throughout the implementation of this that are worth noting. In fact, just a couple of hours ago, the Senator Cardin, along with a group of other Senate Democrats, issued a letter to SBA and Treasury, essentially asking for that guidance to be binding, to allow or to reserve a certain amount of PPP loan dollars for businesses that meet that criteria. So, they are actually already talking, Congress is actually talking about, as early as Thursday, increasing this program by another $250 billion because the demand is so high. So we'll see how that goes. There may be some considerations like the one I just mentioned attached to that. But generally, I think everyone is understanding that this is going to go fast, and we already need a lot more money. And so that's not even the phase 4 negotiations that I was mentioning last time. This is kind of an even interim step, just to address the high urgency issue of running out of money, essentially, for this very quickly. So that's kind of where we're at in DC, and what we're tracking is additional guidance that we anticipate coming out this week too on additional lenders to try to help fill the gap a little bit. Since some of the major financial institutions are, again, just experiencing such high volumes and are having trouble kind of accepting applications right away. Additional lenders will obviously be helpful to that. So we're expecting some additional guidance there. Still waiting on some guidance for independent contractors and self-employed, which can start applying on this Friday. So last Friday, the application opened for small businesses and sole proprietors. This Friday, it's for independent contractors and self-employed. So still, we anticipate some guidance will come out related to that particular application as well. Yeah, so that's kind of the update here. Like I said, it's been a busy week, anticipate another busy one, especially if negotiations and discussions continue in Congress about upping this by another $250 billion. So, yeah.
Well, good. Well, let me just invite anybody in the audience. For last time, we had a pretty busy Q&A here. So if you've got a question and want to pop it into the Q&A, we can bubble those up to Catherine. Go ahead and fire away when ready. Catherine, I just want to sort of comment and respond to that. I think our boots on the ground experience probably matches your view from DC. We, as Launchpad, have tried to apply. We're a JP Morgan Chase. They have essentially what amounts to a form. It's not an application. They say a banker will call you. That obviously hasn't happened yet. We've talked to a banker at Chase. He told us directly, you're too small. I'm not interested in your business. So there's literally, like, I mean, and we're not huge. We're small business, but our numbers are going to be in a similar boat. So, I don't anticipate he's going to be, getting back to us in terms of actually having a banker relationship. I mean, I think this is a situation where we're seeing the level of engagement with the banking system that small businesses truly have, right? It's basically, we have like teller relationships, we have ATM relationships, people have a checking account. Most people have never applied for an SBA loan before, or a line of credit, right? You have to be probably realistically a $2, $3, $5 million business to actually be relevant to a bank. So,
and even that's like still a low-level banker.
Yeah.
It's still not like.
I mean, our Chase banker literally, we get a branch banker assigned to us who, unfortunately, there's a new banker in there every 6 months, right? They're just, their title is vice president, which is kind of silly, but they're just a branch level employee. So there's just no personal relationship at all. So I'm just wondering, like for, Launchpad members, small businesses, I don't know if you have guidance or not. I have some thoughts here too, but it feels like the most important thing is to actually be connected with somebody who can help you and wants to help you. Should we be looking to CDFIs? Should we be looking to smaller, local banks? I've been tweeting out some resources that include like lists of banks that are taking SBA applications, but I think the same constraints you mentioned, a lot of banks are saying we're dealing with existing customers only. We're only dealing with customers who've taken loans. I mean, to me, that seems like a recipe for, I hate to put it this way, but like big the bigger small businesses, 500 employees qualifies as a small business, right?
Right.
The bigger small
$100
businesses
million in revenue.
get the resources that Congress has allocated, and a lot of small businesses, end up getting left out. I know that obviously you're not in control of this, so I'm just sort of.
Catherine, what are you doing to solve this?
But
Yeah.
how does that? Where would you steer people, or what do you think we can help do to point people in the right direction?
No, I mean, definitely share all those concerns too. And even anecdotally, we're hearing similarly that some banks are instituting loan minimums, which is not in the statute. That is, not the intent of Congress. And in fact, there is an incentive structure for lenders to take on smaller loans. In terms of the repayment and all that, it actually, lenders who make larger loans get a smaller percentage versus, smaller loans. But again, that may not, obviously that's not kind of doing enough to influence at least some banks' decisions. Obviously, it's really hard to speak in general terms at the moment, given that at least I'm mostly operating on kind of anecdotal basis right now, but that seems to be the case. So I think, we're, as an organization, we're thinking through some additional policies that could be, included as this continues to expand. Obviously, we're seeing a potential expansion really quickly, even this week, but anticipate that will continue, and that this Paycheck Protection Program will be on the table in future kind of packages of legislation in response to all this. And so we're thinking through ways that this could be improved upon, so that it is better targeted, that we are reaching businesses again that are really in need of this, and not the healthy, bigger businesses necessarily that would be able to weather the storm in the absence of a PPP loan or an EIDL loan, although we're more focused on the former. So I do think that smaller banks, CDFIs, are particularly well-positioned, mission-oriented kind of lending, nonprofit lenders. These are banks that are certainly in a position, or at least are incentivized to take on some of these smaller loans, to work with small businesses that maybe don't have an existing banking relationship, rather than some of the major financial institutions that are also dealing with more of an influx issue and a volume issue than probably some of those smaller community-based lenders. I think that's another thing that the Senate Democrats were asking for was kind of, inclusion of CDFIs and minority development or minority deposit institutions and BIs as being real critical players here, and supporting them in that mission. So definitely would recommend kind of looking at banks and institutions like that. Again, because they're also going to have a lot of that experience working with underserved communities that are likely going to be hardest hit by this, and therefore are in the biggest need, or have the biggest need here. So that would certainly be a recommendation.
Thank you, Catherine. Let me make a couple comments here, and then we can kind of keep this going. One of the things that we are working on actively right now for Launchpad members is identifying banks and CDFIs in each of our communities that we can connect our members to. So that's sort of in process right now, because I think a lot of bankers are overwhelmed and banks are overwhelmed, and not necessarily returning a lot of phone calls and stuff. So certainly for anybody watching, I see Dr. Shakur in Newark, and a number of our members. If you have bankers or lenders that you think can be available to Launchpad members, please bubble those up to us so that we can push those out and sort of help connect our members to that. We're doing that in New Orleans as well, and have a couple local banks, Whitney and Gulf Coast, that we're in touch with to a certain extent. In Stockton, I don't know if we have any viewers in Stockton right now, but we have a CDFI that is a member of Launchpad, and so we've been trying to dialogue with them. Unfortunately, all of these bankers are just absolutely overwhelmed right now, so they are all in that sort of the mantra of focusing on our existing client base, but we're gonna work through that for our members. And as Congress extends the capital available for this, I mean, I think it's tough to be at the front of the line at this point. You mentioned the volume of applications that are already in, but I think what we obviously at a high level,
it's
just
not tough to be at the front of the line. It's tough to be way back in the line, which feels like everybody's at the back of the line.
I mean, it's tough for us and anybody watching probably to get to the front of the line.
Right.
What we don't want the stimulus package to do, the CARES Act to do, is run out of funds before they help the smallest and the neediest and the underserved communities. So let me just make one more comment about the EIDL loan, the EIDL loan, and we put a link to it in the chat here. This is something that's been clarified for us since last week, and I want to make sure that all the viewers are aware of this. There's a little checkbox that says, would you like $10,000 put into your bank account? It almost seems too good to be true. Of course you want to click yes. Cannot confirm yet, but that we haven't received it, but we obviously did check that box. But there is clarity around the SBA guidance that this is a grant. So no matter what the rest of the EIDL loan you might qualify for, and you would have a repayment on, if you check that box, if you get apply for the 10K, assuming people are starting to receive it, and we heard something like there was a 5-day turnaround. This is all sort of Twitter stuff. Nobody that we know, but that will be a grant to businesses. So that's another resource that everybody should be applying for at this point as well, in addition to PPP.
Yeah, small business.
Yeah. And you can still apply for an EIDL loan and a PPP loan. So they can work together. If you applied for an EIDL loan before a PPP loan and used it for payroll, you can just refinance that into a PPP loan, use that for payroll still. You can just use them tandemly and on parallel tracks for separate purposes. So that's important to keep in mind too. That's the loan portion, not the grant that you mentioned, but.
Right. Okay, good.
It's great. I had a question. I mean, it does really feel like the collective feels really behind the 8 ball, right? Like you hear someone who's like, I had a 20 number and I had a 30 number and I had a 36 number, and you're like, oh my God, we're at 36. Does that mean we're like at the very back of the line? Like, what would you say where are we in the process? Has this actually started to move? I mean, we literally heard from our brother-in-law. He's like, yeah, I mean, I've had to do it 3 times and my banker thinks it's going to come through no problem. And I'm like, who the fuck is your banker? Like, why don't I have that guy be my fucking banker? But because apparently he can just get it done and whatever. So can you just give us a sense on like, how freaked out should we be? Where do you think this is going to go? Is it going to be a couple months, or like what do you think the timeline looks like? And I know you have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I'm less familiar with the process in the EIDL loans, or I haven't been keeping as close tabs on kind of the application numbers. And I think that's maybe what you're referencing in terms of like the number that you got. Yeah, okay. But for the PPP loans, I mean, yeah, like I'm a little concerned that it's going slower, obviously, than everyone would like to see in terms of banks actually being able to get up and running and be facilitating these loans. There are a couple of positive positive things that have come to light in the last couple of days that may help with this in terms of getting more banks to process additional loans and get the money out faster. So the SBA director noted that I think yesterday or over the weekend that SBA reactivated 30,000 licenses for community banks and credit unions to get money to small businesses through the PPP program. So they are working on kind of reactivating people within their network to be able to do this. And those are the smaller kind of community lenders, small credit unions that again may be more amenable to making smaller sized loans too. So that's a good thing that I think hopefully we'll see a lot more of that happen in the next couple of days. The second thing that was announced yesterday was the Federal Reserve actually said that they're going to allow banks to turn these loans into the Fed for cash. So some banks were definitely concerned about this low interest loans, holding these on the books. What is that going to mean for them? It's 1% interest rate for the duration of the loan term. So some banks were concerned about that. But with the Fed now saying, hey, we're creating this new facility where you can actually just turn these loans into cash, that may further incentivize more banks to get on board. Whereas previously we had heard that banks were kind of hesitant. So, or that may be why, in addition to the volume issue, part of it may be that they don't want all of these low interest loans on their balance sheet and have concerns about that. So, perhaps that will help at least assuage that concern from the banking perspective. So that's all to say, I don't have the answers as to how quickly money will actually flow to small businesses. I know the intent of the SBA and Treasury is to get it out as quickly as possible. The intent of Congress is to do exactly what we were talking about earlier, of making sure that the hardest hit businesses in the underserved communities, of a smaller size, are the ones that are receiving these loans. So, that I think that is an intent shared across the aisle too. So I feel like there will, I hope, and I'm, kind of speaking more personally, that we'll see some positive changes, both from the agency side of things and what's within their authority, to whether that's reactivating a bunch of new banks or, figuring out a way to make this more attractive for banks to make these loans, or from the congressional side to actually, be more targeted in their approach. I'm hopeful that those actions will continue to be taken. But again, because there is so much authority left to the banks, it's a little bit hard to to make any of those projections, I suppose. So, and it'll be different probably for each lending institution too, as well. So, and not only, of course, once you apply within the banks, then it has to go to the SBA as well. So, that's the next phase that I think we're still too early to kind of get some trend lines around that, in terms of how quickly they're able to process these loans as well, even though the intention, of course, is to do so ASAP. So,
okay.
Sorry, on that.
I've got one more question that I want to throw to you, but I want to make a couple comments on some of the chat things going on right now. One thing that we've been promoting to members and encouraging members, as well as looking at ourselves, is that there's a lot of activity on the state and local level as well right now. We're talking obviously about the SBA on the federal level, but there are grant making programs on the local level. As Jasmine Shakur just shared, Newark through Invest Newark has a number of resources, including I think what also is a $10,000 grant that businesses can apply for. Alec, if you could put up the link, we're collecting everything on a blog post that's running blog post of all of those opportunities. Hello Alice. Alice is also offering grant opportunities, and we're going to have her on as a guest.
We're having Alice come on and talk about their small business grants on Thursday, 11th. Special time for Launchpad TV.
Special time slot.
Thursday to accommodate schedules, but we're really looking forward to having them, and they're going to come and talk a little bit about all of the programs that they have. Real quick, Brian's asking about the PPP, likely to be forgivable, and that is definitely the case.
Yeah, the EIDL loan is not forgivable, but the $10,000 is a grant. But the PPP is forgivable, and
Up to
Catherine,
certain limits.
up to certain limits and qualifications around it. But that's the loan that is sort of considered forgivable. Catherine, maybe you can sort of refresh us on that.
Yeah. Yes. So there is. Yes, it is forgivable. Yeah, up to a certain. Within some qualifications, obviously. One thing to note that actually came out in guidance on Thursday is that if you use the loan for more than 25% of non-payroll expenses, that actually may not be forgivable. So that's another thing that we have flagged as, again, kind of, a little bit of a concern in that it lowers the flexibility or kind of reduces the flexibility of this being able to be used for a variety of, of course, a variety of costs and debts and other payments that need to be made. I, of course, think about like those companies who have a lot of rent, but maybe don't have a lot of payroll, and, how to balance that. Obviously, the intent behind Paycheck Protection Act is to keep employees on payroll. So that is the primary policy intent, and this is kind of an aim at ensuring that's the case. But what it does do is kind of minimize the level of flexibility that businesses have to use the loan amount, for whatever they need in order to stay solvent and stay, available and open for business so that they can keep people on payroll. You can't keep people on payroll if your business doesn't exist.
Right.
So that is one thing that we, have flagged for members of Congress, because that's not in the statute, and that was issued as part of the kind of the rules that came out on Thursday. So something to note, because I think it's not gotten a ton of attention yet, and we caught that relatively early. And again, I think that's just it's an important factor in calculation to consider when you are kind of calculating loan forgiveness. But yeah, we actually have. So, and again, I'll share this in the chat box if I can multitask here in a second. But essentially, the loan forgiveness you'll be eligible for loan forgiveness for an 8-week period after the origination date for the amount of payroll costs, payment on interest mortgage obligations, rent obligations, and utility payments for that 8-week period. So it can't exceed the principal of the loan, but generally it's a pretty favorable kind of term of forgiveness. So,
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, great. One more clarifying question, then I think we'll let you go, Catherine. Thank you very much. One of the discussion topics we had last week was around owner draws or the way business owners often pay themselves.
Yes.
This was a lively topic between our accountant, our tax accountant, you, other business owners, attorney. This was very lively.
Engagement.
And a lot of small businesses, might be 1, 2, 3 people. It's a very common way to pay yourself. You essentially take an owner's draw.
Sure.
So do we have a verdict on that at this point? Does that count as part of payroll?
Well, so I actually spoke with Senator Rubio's staff about this, and he created the program. So hopefully you can take this to the bank, literally. But yes, owner draws do count as payroll costs. So, yeah. Yes, so that should be, that's certainly the intent. That should be how it works. No matter how you pay yourself, whether it's like physically on your payroll or not, that should count as payroll costs. Again, you have to be aware that if you pay yourself more than $100,000, anything in excess of that does not count toward payroll costs. But yes, generally that should apply.
And just for anybody who's watching, your accountant may not know that. So through the application process, you're gonna have to get your accountant to pull together your payroll costs, or maybe you can do it if you do it yourself. But we've had pushback from accountants because in other ways of tax accounting, they would look at if you're paying in FICA and Social Security and that kind of thing. So there would normally be maybe a different process for that. But we're going to follow your guidance here, Catherine, and we're hearing that from others as well. I think this is a scenario where that is part of payroll for the intent, right? So
and this is why we're going straight to Catherine Lyons to get the data, because it is true. Like because it is so decentralized, the distribution of support for this, your advice is really decentralized. And so as a result, like we kind of need to have that one true north of feedback and advice and that control loop. And so resources like the webinar you guys did last week from EIG, that's super helpful, because you can start to hear one thing, because the chatter is enormous out there.
Sure.
And that whole thing is, we had multiple accountants, different bankers, different people, all sort of evaluating what is the interpretation, and we really want to go back to the source for what is the interpretation. So Catherine, your time with us is so valuable, and I hope the audience realizes that we are trying to cut through the clutter and the noise that exists here. It's also really highlighting for me, I don't think we've ever realized, like, we always talk about our small business resources and how we're supporting small business, and in times of good time, the support that we offer, is interesting and good, but it's now that I'm actually starting to see all these cracks in the system that I think is pretty amazing as we kind of come out of this, to be able to start to see the real challenges that small businesses face when times are troubled, right? And when there is challenge. And it's been really nice to have a partner on the other side who's actually thinking about the legislation and thinking about how we do this, that also wants to hear the stories from the ground, from our customers and from those folks. And, I think that's why we do this show. That's why we are talking to all our members. That's why it's critical for all of our small businesses to actually share the impact that they're undergoing. We're gathering those resources. I love the spirit of collaboration around creative financing ideas, all good stuff, but like, we want to be a good voice for you, and so we're really grateful to that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, policy, what is the point of policymaking if it doesn't actually work for the people it's supposed to help? So that's what we want to constantly hear, is like, is this helping? Is this working? What
We're not doing it for the gajillionaires?
Huh?
You're not doing it for the gajillionaires?
I am not. No. There's some people out there do, but not me. So yeah, no, it's a pleasure to continue to be on this, and obviously you'll be back anytime you invite me. But yeah, and I really appreciate your feedback too. So.
All right. Keep fighting our fight. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Catherine. Good to be with you. I'm gonna let you go.
Okay.
And, we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. All right. We are wrapping up, but there are two things that you need to stay tuned for. First is, do you want to give them an update on the new RASA.io newsletter that we just launched this week? Sure.
We, in addition to Launchpad TV, have rolled out an update to our newsletter. It's powered by a platform called RASA.io, another company that's in the Launchpad network. Amit Nagarajan's new company, Jared Loftus is working there, as well as a number of other folks. So I'm sort of curating this for Launchpad members. You may have gotten a couple of these already. We're trying to put a lot of the best resources that we talk about on this show in there for you. So
also interesting things too, if you need a break from the resources.
Yeah, so look out for that. And
handcrafted by our very own Chris Schultz.
That is curated by yours truly. Yeah.
Isn't that cool? All right, and then we wanted to introduce a very exciting new segment for Launchpad TV that we're going to be doing tomorrow.
Yep.
It's called Wind Down Wednesday. Wind is a pun, like wind. We are thrilled to be hosting Megan Glab of Rhyme Cellars. She and her husband Ryan are the talented duo behind this amazing Sonoma winery, where they bring their old world sensibilities to the terroir of California. This is Megan. She's pouring some rhyme. She is amazing, so passionate. They approach things from the perspective of a lot of the varietals are Italian. They're absolutely delicious. I found Megan, we went to a wine education session a couple of years ago, and Megan was doing a talk on natural wine, and she had the line of the day, which is, I don't know how to make a $10 Vermentino. Because it's really hard to make wine in California, and it's really expensive compared to other places in the country. Anyway, she has, they have an amazing Vermentino. They do a his and hers. She's a husband-wife duo with her husband, Ryan. We love their wines. We're lucky to have so many wines here in California. And so what we're going to do is showcase different winemakers and different ideas every Wednesday. We're lucky to have these amazing wines, and also lucky to be friends with Ryan and Megan.
Yes.
So tomorrow, stay tuned. We'll be doing probably a little bit of education, a little bit of fun. Bring your own wine.
Do you have to bring wine with you, or can you bring a cocktail or anything you want?
I think you bring anything you want. I mean, you might want to bring wine just because if she's talking about things that might be interesting.
And we won't just be talking about her wine.
Not
We're
her
talking
wines.
about, this is a very accessible part of the segment, right?
That's right, literally.
You don't have to know anything about
go
wine.
crazy.
Enjoy it.
Go crazy. But she will be dropping some knowledge, and she's a sparkler.
Yeah.
You can even bring sparkling wines if you're looking for a sparkler. So that is it. Catherine's still answering questions about the PPP.
Let's let Catherine answer any questions in the chat. We want to thank all our guests for being on today. We had Knud on from Free Your Tea. He is a Launchpad New Orleans member. He highlighted a special offer for Launchpad members. Launchpad in Exile gets you 30% off to subscription tea, customized and curated to your own tastes. So thank you very much, Knud, for being on today. We also had Catherine Lyons on from EIG. This is the second segment with Catherine.
I know.
She's been very, very helpful to us and our members on helping us navigate these new SBA loans that are out, the PPP and the EIDL loans. If you missed any of that, you can watch this segment on YouTube in about an hour or so. And we're going to be continuing to update the blog post that was in the chat, and will be also linked under this video if you're watching it later on Instagram or YouTube. We do this show every Tuesday and Thursday at noon Pacific.
Apparently he just does the show.
3 Eastern. What do you have?
I mean, you're on way over a minute. Or I was like, do a minute recap. You just sat there, you let the whole show run.
I thought it was pretty good.
It was actually really good. So we do it what? Tuesdays and Thursdays?
Yep. At noon Pacific and 3 Eastern.
And we're going to have a special episode of Launchpad TV at 11 o'clock on Thursday with Alice, co-founder and president, Elizabeth Gore. And so we are really excited to highlight her on Launchpad TV this Thursday.
That's right.
Want to take it away?
Yeah, thank you to all of the members of Launchpad Nation, Catherine, Brian, Ben Reese, Jaja, all the members of the Launchpad team for being in here today. Really nice to get a chance to hang out with everybody. And hopefully we'll see many of you over a glass of wine or a cocktail or a beer or whatever you want tomorrow for a fun special episode of Launchpad TV, Wind Down Wednesday.
Wind Down Wednesday.
All right, see you tomorrow.